of the Judicial Compensation Committee and Commission, and I'm bringing this meeting officially to order. And I welcome you to the meeting, many of you for the first time, and we're so glad to have you here and begin our important work. Our staff liaison is Megan Lavoie, and Megan is going to take over introductions here. I think for the best order of business, go ahead and continue to keep your yourselves unmuted or muted until called upon. It allows for less distraction and interruption. And then, but feel free to unmute yourselves and chime in at any point that you have a question or concern. Megan?
Sure, yes. So I'm going to call the roll, and then we'll go around and do some brief introductions so everyone can get to know each other. So Chairman Salmons?
Here.
Carlos Amaral?
Is here.
Justice Borland?
Here.
Ms. Clemens? Mr. Davis? Mr. Fideli?
Here.
Justice Johnson? Ms. Kinney?
Here.
And Mr. Nelson?
This is Phil Johnson. I'm here. I struggle with electronics a little.
Hi, Justice Johnson.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we do have a quorum. I guess Chairman Salmons, do you want to go first and give some background about yourself, and then we'll just go down the line?
Okay. As I said, my name is Scott Salmons. I was previously on the Judicial Compensation Commission and served during one of our successful ventures of getting actual increases in some of the upper year range. But I was terming off and then was honored to be reappointed as your chairman after the first chairman and only chairman departed and retired from this. And I am currently a businessman out of Waco. I own a health education company. We sell supplemental teaching aids for health educators all over the world. And I have several other real estate and other business ventures that I've been involved in. I'm a Baylor graduate, and I still reside in Waco with my wife and 6 children. And I'm honored to serve on this role.
Thank you. Justice Borland, you're next on my screen. I'm going to unmute you just a second.
Justice Borland, you'll need to unmute yourself. We're not hearing you. So sorry. There we go.
Sorry, let me apologize in advance for my paralegal barking in the background. I have an extensive home remodeling project going on around me. But I'm Cindy Olson Borland. I previously served on the Third Court of Appeals and now back in private practice. I live in Round Rock, and I was honored to be appointed just a year or so ago. I may be the newest member. I think I filled the seat of Justice Huddle, and consequently very glad to be here. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Next on my screen is Ms. Kinney.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Linda Kinney. I live in Comfort, Texas, in Kendall County. I've been here for about 3 years. My husband and I are both retired, and we moved here from Dripping Springs, where we lived for 34 years. So we just moved a little bit further out into the country to enjoy the open space. We love it. We have 2 adult daughters. One lives in Bee Cave, and the other lives in San Antonio. And we have 3 grandchildren that we enjoy spending time with. So I'm just enjoying being retired.
Thank you, Ms. Kinney. Mr. Davis, you're next. And you have to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Conrad Davis. I'm a retired military officer from the Air Force, having served 22 years. I also was privileged to serve on the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles for 7 years. And I'm on my second term on the JCC. So my term will be ending February 2023. Live in Sugar Land, Texas. Have 2 adult sons, and I enjoy serving on the commission and look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next is Tony Fideli, and I hope I'm saying your last name correctly.
You got it, Megan. Fideli.
Perfect.
That's perfect. So, good morning, everyone. Tony Fideli. I'm in Wichita Falls, Texas. I'm a Texas Tech Law School graduate. And first 5 years, I was assistant DA and head of the civil division here in Wichita County. In the last 12 years, I'm a partner in a firm, Purdue Brandon. We do ad valorem tax work throughout 7 states. I'm born and raised in Wichita Falls. I'm married. I have a 9-year-old daughter in 4th grade. I previously served on the Board of Regents at Midwestern State University. And when we merged, became part of the Texas Tech system in August, there was a vacancy. And so I may also be one of the newest ones with just a few months tenure. So looking forward to the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
Hi, everyone. Carlos Amaral. Have been living in this place in Plano for over 30 years now, I believe it or not. I was born and raised in Brazil. My wife is from Arkansas, Little Rock, and we have 3 beautiful boys, which they're all grown men nowadays. Oldest one is a doctor, starting his practice of pediatric in Sholo, Arizona. I don't know if you guys know what Sholo is, but it's a really beautiful place. It's very up in the mountains. My wife and I were both in the IT. I have a bachelor master's. I did it 2 years, and doctor undergrad in Stephen Ray Voss and Go Lumberjack. I am A&M master's, and I got a 2 years in computer science at UT Austin. Now I am the CIO and executive vice president of a company called Service Technologies, and I'm glad to be here. Prior to being part of the board, I have served 12 years out of 14 years under the former Governor Perry, board of regent at Stephen Eval State University, manufacturing housing board. I was the finance chair over there. I also served in the Texas Judicial and not commission, is council. And about 2 years ago, I joined this committee. So I'm looking forward to continue learning more about the judicial compensation. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, you're next.
Thank you. Good morning, and good to see everybody this morning. My name's Kurt Nelson, and I live in San Antonio, and have been here actually for 35 years. Grew up in the Midwest, went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and got to Texas as quickly as we could. My wife, Linda, we have 3 adult children, son and daughter-in-law in Houston with 2 grandsons there, and a daughter in Hot Springs, Arkansas with 2 little ones. Her and her husband have 2 little ones, so we've got 4 grandkids, and then our youngest daughter is in Austin and married and has the grand dogs. So it's just a pleasure to be on the commission, and I was appointed in 2019, so now still in my first term.
Thank you. Justice Johnson.
Get unmuted. And I'm trying to get my photograph off of there so I could actually appear live also, but it's been a while since I've done one of these. Phil Johnson, I'm a private practice lawyer now. Was on the Supreme Court for about 13 years, and before that was on the Court of Appeals in Amarillo. And before that, I practiced law. So family consists of 5 children, 9 grandchildren, and pleased to be a member of the committee.
Thank you, Justice Johnson. And then last but not least, we have JJ Clemens.
Hello, everyone. Hi. My name is JJ Clemens. I live in Sugar Land, Texas. So, we're never here. I have 1 daughter and 3 dogs. 2 of them adopted. And my bachelor degree is in finance accounting and master in MBA. I'm a certified auditor. I am right now working as a chief global strategy for integrated viral protection solution company. And also I work for Congressman Troy Nehls. And I was served in Texas Real Estate Research and Advisory Committee. And I was reappointed to this position and this honor to service commission. And it's great to meet everyone.
Thank you. And that's all the commissioners that we have on. I'm Megan Loy, I'm the Administrative Director of the Office of Court Administration. I was appointed in December of last year. I previously worked as the Director of Public Affairs for the Office of Court Administration and have worked with this commission for several years now, including when I was a staffer in the Senate and worked for Senator Robert Duncan. So very familiar with what this commission's mission is and what y'all have been doing and recommending over the years. We do have several OCA staff I'll introduce real fast, Kelly Thibodeau, who's my executive assistant, and you probably received several emails from her. And she's also Zoom extraordinaire. So if you have any questions or concerns about Zoom, she can help you, but you'll be hearing from Kelly probably a lot throughout your terms. We also have Minna Ramon, who is our general counsel, and Angela Garcia, who's our chief data officer. And then we have Justice Brett Busby from the Supreme Court, and then also Judge Alfonso Charles, who are going to be doing some presentations, and I'll let them introduce themselves when their time to present comes up. And we also have Nina Hesu, who is the General Counsel for the Supreme Court. So we have a great group today, and Chairman Solomons, I think we're ready to get started with the agenda.
Okay, well, thank you very much. A wonderful array of experience and representation of our state here. So we're very grateful that you all are willing to take your time and serve the governor in this capacity. We're also honored today to have 2 justices. This is quite a wonderful array of presentations today that we will have, and we're very honored to have them here with us. I need, as a moment of business, approval of the minutes of 11/9/2020. If I could get a motion and a second, I would appreciate that.
I'm making a motion to accept as stated.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
So that was Mr. Amaral and Mr. Nelson seconding. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so those minutes are approved. So next on our docket here, we have an update from the State Bar Judicial Section, Justice Brett Busby of the Texas Supreme Court. Justice Busby, thank you so much for attending, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Good morning. Some of you I know, and others I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet, but it's great to get to meet you virtually, those that I haven't met before. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Supreme Court of Texas and the Texas Judiciary for your service on the commission. It is, I think, a very important role that the commission plays, and I'll get into that in just a moment. Just to tell you a little bit about me, I have served on the court for about 3 years, succeeding my good friend, Justice Johnson, who was on the court. And it's good to see you this morning, Justice Johnson. And before that, I was a judge for 6 years on the Court of Appeals in Houston. And before that, I was an appellate lawyer in private practice in Houston. And my wife, Erin, is a law professor at UT Law School. She teaches their U.S. Supreme Court litigation clinic, and we have 2 school-age children. we moved the family to Austin a couple of years ago, but lived in Houston before that. So that's a little bit about me, and just want to say first, as we're starting out, how much we appreciate your service, because the commission really does play an important role. I think it really acknowledged across the legislature in recommending policy in this area of judicial compensation, because you all are an independent voice, and you know, it's one thing for the judges to come and say, you know, here's what we see, and here's you know, what we're doing to try to what we need to try to attract and retain the kind of talent and people that you would want hearing your cases. But it's another thing entirely for an independent body to have examined all of the information and to provide a report to the legislature. So we're very grateful to you for your service and your time to do that. I want to give you just a little bit of an update on what's been going on during the pandemic and the yeoman service that the Texas judiciary has rendered during that time. We have issued now almost 50 emergency orders from the Texas Supreme Court since the pandemic started, just trying to you know, modify rules and procedures so that the wheels of justice can keep turning during this time. And really the boots on the ground have been the district judges. You're going to hear from Judge Charles in a moment, and they have really been at the tip of the spear to keep things moving, and also the important work of the Office of Court Administration has enabled us to do that. They had the foresight to get Zoom licenses for the whole Texas judiciary before the pandemic even hit, so that we were ready within a week to roll out and be able to get online and start hearing cases. And I think just having attended, both Chief Justice Hecht and I were talking about this recently. We attend a lot of conferences with judges from other states, and people are just amazed at what Texas has been able to do. We've been the national leader in this area, being able to continue keeping the wheels of justice turning by using remote proceedings during the period when before vaccines and that sort of thing, when people were not able to gather in a courtroom. And this statistic is just really captures it for me. Between April 2020 and January 2022, there were over 2 million virtual hearings in Texas, with over 7 million participants attending. And you can see in the statistics that's enabled us really to keep pace with all of the civil cases, and so that we really don't have a backlog of civil cases to speak of across the state, which if you talk to judges in California and New York and Florida, that's not the case there. In California and New York, especially, they just shut their judicial system down for several months, basically. And so they've got terrible backlogs to deal with. And it's thanks to the technology assistance from the Office of Court Administration and the boots on the ground of our district judges working hard, and county court judges, and at all levels, going all the way down to our justices of the peace, you know, working to be sure that those hearings get handled and get processed. In criminal cases, of course, we have constitutional and other constraints that require in-person proceedings for trials. And so we do have somewhat of a backlog on criminal cases, but again, not nearly what they see in other states. And we're already working right now to distribute some additional funds that we have received. Megan and her office are in communication with the 20 largest counties that have that criminal backlog to be sure that we get funds to them for visiting judges so that we can get that cleared out. So it really has been a tremendous effort by the Texas judiciary to keep the wheels of justice turning timely, because as a private practice lawyer, you know, I well remember the frustration of clients, you know, trying to get their cases disposed of in a timely way, and we all recognize the importance of that. And I think our judiciary is really to be commended for the work that they've been able to do during the pandemic. And so one thing that you'll see in the statistics that you'll be discussed a little later in the agenda. I think Angela is going to go through a presentation, and Judge Charles has a lot more detail on this as well. And I'll just say, sort of from a big picture, as far as where judicial salaries are, of course, it's been several years since we had a change to the base compensation. That the last time was in 2013 with the 12% increase. And if you look at why that's important, we continue to lose a lot of our experienced trial judges to retirement. And of course, it's great to be able to keep those people and their experience to work on the bench and serving Texans as much as we can. And most of those judges have said that the lack of increases in compensation are a significant factor in them deciding to retire rather than continuing to serve. So it really does, the salary level makes a difference in retention. It also makes a difference in recruitment. You'll see that the nature of this process, of course, as you all know, is that the legislature doesn't give a raise every time. And so you'll see a chart that, where the raises are kind of, it'll go up for a while and then it'll be flat. And if you look at inflation, which continues to go up, and of course now is really rising at an unprecedented rate, you'll see that our salary, although even with the compensation that Chairman Salmons mentioned, where we were able to get some tiers in for more senior judges, which has helped somewhat with retention. But even with that factored in, we fall behind the 5 or 6 largest states in terms of compensation. And also that it continues to, what the past accomplishments in terms of salary continue to be eroded by inflation. And so you'll see that currently the Chief Justice is making a little bit less than a first-year lawyer at the top firms in the state, and that our district judge base is less than the average salary of an experienced lawyer in the state. And so based on where inflation's been, it looks like, I think that, as you'll see from the statistics, it's about between a 10 and 15% increase in the base would be necessary just to keep pace with inflation. But of course, since we don't get an increase every year, the goal is to try to get above that a little bit so it averages out over time. And so I would urge the commission to consider that as well in setting a percentage figure, because we're not going to get an increase every year, and we need to get what we can this year so that we will try to keep pace with inflation for the next few sessions before we're able to come back and ask for an increase again. So that's just a little bit of a big picture of what's going on in the judiciary and why this issue of compensation is important to us. And I'd be delighted to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions? Thank you, Justice Busby, for your time and your insight. Very much appreciate it, and your participation today. We're going to move on then to the legislative history of judicial compensation by Judge Alfonso Charles. Judge Charles, I think didn't you serve on commission at one time, or at least I know you have. Unmute yourself. I know you have testified before us a couple of times, and we're very honored to have you here to give this history for those who have not been aware of how our commission has worked and kind of where we're going or where we've been, so we can kind of know where we're trying to go.
Thank you, Chairman Salmons. Now, I've never been a member of it, but I think since 2011, I've been testifying or making presentations to you all. So I feel like in some ways I have been a member of it. You've been as regular as many of our members. I said that. But I just want to thank you all for your all's past efforts and all that you've done for us. And I just want to kind of take you through today, how legislatively this issue has been dealt with. Really since the 1990s. And I did prepare a PowerPoint. Kelly, do I have permission to share?
Yes, you should.
Okay, there we go. Share screen. There we go. Let's see. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right. Realistically, since in the 1990s, the legislature gave fairly regular pay raises. Between 1991, from 1991 to 1999, there were 5 pay increases. Some of those were staggered, like during a percentage increase even during the biennium. But they ranged anywhere from a 1% raise, then there was a significant pay raise, 15.1%. And then from 2021 and 2023, those 2 sessions, there were no pay increases, although there were attempts at it. And then in 2005, there was a 22.9% pay increase, and that raised the district judge salary to $125,000. And what else it did is that Senator Duncan and Representative Hartnett and others created a formula at that time to base all of the judicial salaries off a district judge's salary. And what it did was that a Court of Appeals justice, their salary is 110% of a district judge salary. The Supreme Court and Court of Criminal Appeals justices are 120% of a district judge salary. And then there's also additional supplements for the chiefs of the Courts of Appeals and the Chief Justice and the presiding judge of the Court of Criminal Appeals. So that kind of got the formula going. And so that way, if any one group got a raise, all the judges got a raise. In 2007, there were no real big efforts on judicial compensation, but the legislature that year created the Judicial Compensation Commission. And so in 2009, the commission made their first recommendation, or actually in 2008 for the 2009 session, and they recommended a 5.7% increase for district judge salary, a 7.2% increase for Court of Appeals salaries, and an 8.7% increase for justices of the Supreme Court and the judges of the Courts of Criminal Appeals. The legislature that session didn't pass any pay raises. One thing, and I do have it on the wrong slide, actually in 2007, what the legislature did is many of the county court at law judges were left out of the pay raise in 2005. And in 2007, the legislature corrected that to make sure that all county court at law judges are paid a minimum of less than $1,000 less than a district judge's salary. 2011, the Judicial Compensation Commission again came back with the exact same recommendations as they had in 2009. But due to the economy and due to where the finances were of the state at that time, there was no real effort to even try and increase salaries in 2011. Then in 2013, the commission recommended 21.5% pay increase for all state court, all levels of state courts. And the way what happened was the judges working with and the commission working with Senator Duncan and then Representative Tryon Lewis in the House came up with an idea that since the mechanism was already in place to whatever a district judge's salary was, instead of introducing new legislation, the agreement was just to put the money in the budget and raise the district judge's salary to $140,000, or to raise the district judge's salary 21.5%. And the Senate passed that. The House passed it at a lower rate, and so they went to conference committee. And at the conference committee, the 21.5% raise was lowered to a 12% raise to basically get the district judge's salary up to $140,000. And that moved everybody else up 10% incrementally. Courts of Appeals up to $154,000, and the Supreme Court up to $168,000. That conference, many of the conference committee members, told the judges and others, come back next session and we'll get you the rest of that raise. Very well supported. They just didn't want to give it to us at that time. One of the problems, however, was that many of the members caught a lot of flack for raising their own retirement because legislative retirement is tied to judicial salaries. And so there were many advocacy groups that went out and campaigned against many of the members for raising their salary or their retirement. But based on what the legislators have told us in 2015, the commission said, let's just go with a 5% raise. That's fair. And based on all the good news we had heard from the legislator the past session, we thought that was a very, very realistic goal. And again, we went with the same approach. Let's just put it in the budget. Well, unfortunately, at the end of the budget session, at the end of the conference committee, they did not give us a raise at all. Said, come back next time. So in 2017, we came back again. There were a couple different proposals. One to just put it in the budget again. Another was there was a bill introduced by Representative Schofield to do a formula based on consumer price index and some other things on how judges should be paid. It got a favorable hearing in the House. In the Senate, we could not even get it. We got a hearing, but we could not get a vote in the Senate State Affairs Committee. And then, despite the judges calling and emailing at the end of the session, we fell short again of a raise. So we redoubled efforts. One thing that the legislature did pass is it passed the State Commission on Judicial Compensation. And we had hearings in the interim. And in 2019, we came back again. The commission recommended a 15% pay raise across the board, and also recommended that, funding be placed initially in the comptroller's budget. Funding for the pay raise was put in the comptroller's budget in 2019, but the legislature did not pass an across-the-board pay raise. Instead, they came up with the tiered system keyed by House Bill 2384 by Representative Leach. And what it did was it left the base salaries where they were at 140 for a district judge, 154 for courts of appeals, and 168 for the Supreme Court and Court of Criminal Appeals. But then at 4 years of service, a judge got a 10% raise. And then at 8 years of service, the judge got another 10% raise. And so it caused, judges with over 8 years experience to get a 20% raise. And then there was a third tier proposed that was not included in the final version of the bill. So as Angela will go over with you, it set up this current pay structure. A district judge 0 to 4 years gets paid $140,000. A district judge 4 to 8 years, $154,000, and a district judge at 8 years plus gets $168,000. And then 10% increases for each level of court from there up. It also included the county courts at law, and stabilized in a county court at law. The minimum salary is $1,000 less than a comparable district judge. And it sets that the maximum salary that a county court at law judge can now make is $1,000 less than a district judge, a 12-year district judge with their longevity pay. So that also does away with what one of the problems we had in the past was county court at law judges making more than some district judges, and that alleviates most of that problem. It also lowered longevity pay to 12 years. And then it also took care of our child protection courts and our associate judges. I set their salaries at 90% of a district judge. Took care of set salaries for regional presiding judges. But one thing it did is it also raised the district or the state judge's contribution to retirement up to 9.5%. The problem with this is that actually resulted for judges who were less than 4 years, it resulted in actually a pay cut for them of 2.5%. So not only did those judges not even get a raise, they got a pay cut. But it didn't raise legislative retirement. And it helped ensure that judges, the longer you stay on the bench, you get a raise. Also, it did not raise the level for JRS 1, Judicial Retirement System 1 retirees, they had traditionally had always gotten a raise whenever the judges got a raise. But since the base salary wasn't raised, they didn't get a raise. So we came back in 2021, the commission recommended 10%, but due to the COVID situation, we did not attempt a pay raise at all, although Representative Schofield did file his formula pay bill again. So it has been over this coming session, it will be 10 years since the base salary has been raised. And what we're finding with that is that while we did get a raise for the more experienced judges, 4 years more or 8 years or more, and that has helped with retention, we're finding it now harder to attract good qualified candidates to run for entry-level positions because of the $140 salary. One of the areas that is affected is that while the DAs, district attorneys, are tied to a judge's salary, a district attorney with over 8 years experience is making $168,000. But if he runs for DEA, for district judge, he'd have to run at the $140 salary, $140,000 salary. Also, even now in smaller communities, lawyers, good lawyers, are making a lot more money than $140,000. So when you're trying to talk some of them into say, hey, we're going to have this judicial opening in next year, they're not interested because where the salary currently is. So as we come into the 2023 session, what we're going to be asking you all to consider is at least 15 to 20% of a pay increase. Reason for that is because every time, the 2 times that we've gotten pay raises, the recommendation of the commission has been cut from the 21.5% in 2013 down to a 12% raise. And again, it was, the whole recommendation wasn't considered in 2019. One of the other things I think we have to consider is the link between judicial salaries and legislative retirement. That is still an issue. And in talking with some of the legislators this year and late last year, they're in favor of a pay raise for us, but they're saying, well, I don't want to raise my own retirement. So we have to look at, is there a way to delink or at least make where this pay raise would not affect legislative retirement, or, be creative. And also consider recommendations for some type of formula pay structure in the future to where we're not coming back every session and saying, hey, let's do this, that we could maybe somehow get regular pay increases on a smaller level. And that way, when we do get a pay increase, it's not a 10, 15% raise, but it's just keeping up. So, and those are the requests that we have, and that's kind of the history. It's, it's gone to be about every 8 to 10 years that a pay raise happens or the base is adjusted. And unfortunately, that's where we are again. But I do want to, on behalf of all the judiciary, I thank you all very, very much for the efforts you've made in the past. And I just look forward to all the judges look forward to working with you all this coming session, and hopefully we can be successful. And I'll entertain any questions.
I have a quick question, Judge. Would you be so kind to share the presentation? It's very informative.
Yes.
I didn't know the history as the way you point out. Last year, the last session, we had a big problem. It was not only COVID, is the state faced a huge deficit, and
Yes.
Every single state department and divisions had to cut payroll. I knew when we submit our proposal, I felt like that is something that I was concerned asking the high of a pay increase. So do you think if 15% in how we are, or 15 to 20, do you recommending in the situation we are today is a good one? Or do you think the governor and the legislature would have accepted that as a vision? So I just wanted your feedback.
I think it's an appropriate recommendation. Again, part of it is based on a realization that we will probably if they consider a pay raise, they'll probably cut it.
Right.
But if we go in asking for 10%, hoping for 5, that I think we need to try and catch up with where we should be. It needs to be in that 15 to 20% range. One of the things I think that we've been good about in the past, just as in 2011, it was a very difficult financial session for the legislature, and the judiciary did not push pay raise. We worked with the legislature on other bills to try and make good legislation. I think that's what we did last session in 2021. Is we knew we weren't going to get a pay raise. Representative Schofield filed his bill, and there was some testimony on it. But everything else, we were working with them on other things such as bail reform and court reporters and courts of appeals. So I think we showed a lot of good faith by not pushing a pay increase, but I think the 15 to 20% is realistic. And also based on what the comptroller is saying, that there is going to be money available this session. I think if we don't try and take advantage of this session, it hurts us going forward.
Thank you.
And I've shared the PowerPoint. I've emailed it to Kelly and Megan so we can get it out to you all.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
First, let me say thank you so much, Judge Charles. You've done a wonderful job of giving us a real historic synopsis of what has been done and what lies before us. He's hit on several of the points that I think we're going to have to navigate. And just to update several of you who have not been on the commission, generally our goal is to look at the data that is mandated by the legislature in our founding legislative documentation that set up this commission. They gave us an outline of things that we're supposed to look at. My contention on the board has always been, what do we emphasize that is politically palatable? We have not been successful when we come out with big numbers and talk about other states, especially liberal states that are not particularly exciting to the Republican senators in the legislature. They don't really care how we compare to New York and California. And they certainly aren't going to sell that to their own constituents. So that has been an issue that we tried to downplay the last time we had success, and just really talked about the importance of retention, but not only retention, it's about getting people into the system and being willing to recruit judges at all, and people who are willing to serve. And I think that that's going to continue to be my emphasis is if we don't deal with that base pay, we're going to have a difficulty at all getting good attorneys to enter this worthy profession. So that's one thing. The other thing that is the decoupling. We kind of decoupled that. I don't know if that makes any sense. We decoupled by going into the tiered system, which was successful by having your time of service go ahead and make some automatic raises. And that helped us with the decoupling. And when I say decoupling, I'm talking about specifically to the legislative retirement fund. The legislatures do not ever think that they want to be caught giving themselves a pay raise. It's not been palatable. It's not been politically savvy. And so if they try to give a pay raise to the judges, then what that does is that increases the amount that by law of their retirement pay. So that is one of the issues that I would really like to continue to work on and try to find a legislative vehicle to do that decoupling. If we could ever get the decoupling, it may be more palatable and reasonable for the legislature to go ahead and put something in place that's at a base rate that goes ahead and recognizes that the judges, these are their careers, whereas the legislatures, it's not considered a career, it's considered volunteer service at a very low pay. So those are the two issues that I think we need to keep looking at. We also, just to help you understand your role, you don't have a lot of work to do. In a lot of commissions meet more frequently. We do not meet that often. And when we do, we seek your advice, your input, and your ability to help us guide the recommendations we make. One, do you agree with the recommendations? So that's the first thing. Don't just assume that when we throw them out here that they're final. You can impact that. You can say, I think it's too high. I think it's too low. I think it needs to do something else. Be creative. That's what we've been. The most creative thing I think we did was I went to Controller Hager's office and said, hey, let's get this in the budget as opposed to making it be a legislative act, even to get it considered, and make it a political act before it even goes into the budget. If it can be presented as a part of the overall budget of the controller, then they have to take it out as opposed to having a legislative action of even to consider it. And so that's where we saw success. And that was just came from, I'm not even sure, Megan, maybe it was your idea, but it came from a conversation that I went and had with the Hager, and then they formally brought it over, and Hager was very receptive to it. So my thoughts are, we need to come to an agreement, and you're going to get more information here from on the statistics. But we need to come to agreement as to what recommendations we would want to make. We will have hearings at the next meeting before we would make our formal recommendation. But then we would be trying to make a recommendation to the Comptroller Hager's budget formally in that process, and that's why we're on a timeline that we are. I hope that's making sense to help bring all of you up to speed as to how we're working or what our job is. We can be creative in anything we want to recommend, but we also have legislative mandates that say what we have to present. And we've added a key component, and Megan's going to talk to this in a little bit, but we've added the comparison of workforce development numbers that is not in the mandate, but it also gives you an idea of how it compares to other workers in the state. So Judge Charles did a great job of pointing out that what the average lawyer is making and what he would be making to take a pay cut to be a judge. Those are the kinds of things that are important that were not in the mandate. I think what is in the mandate that sometimes gets people frustrated is when you start talking about what the top 5 law firms are making and what those associates are making. And that's just not that's not the body of the profession. That's kind of the outliers. And it just kind of makes people mad. They say, well, we're not trying to match where every judge gets paid what a, Jaworski lawyer makes. It's just not, that's not what this profession is about. Those are more the outliers. And if they can make that, they need to stay in that field and go work for those firms. And so I think those are the kinds of things that even though they're mandated, that we look at those things. I think it's very important that we be politically sensitive, or we will run into a brick wall. So the next, I hope that is helpful to you all. If you have questions, feel free to comment at some point, but we're going to go into our demographics and turnovers and what are judicial salaries by Angela Garcia. She's our Chief Data Officer of the Office of the Court Administration. So we'll turn it over to Angela at this time.
Megan was going to jump in just before me, right?
Yeah, so I, just because y'all were talking about what is required for the commission by statute to look at, I was going to pull up that statute and show that to y'all. So let me see if I can share my screen. Let me know. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so this is located in the Government Code, Section 35-102. So it requires the Compensation Commission to not later than December 1st of each even number year before session to produce a report with their recommendations and present that to the legislature. And then the factors that are laid out in statute for this commission to consider in setting their recommendation, you can see first, the skill and experience required of the particular judgeship at issue. the value of service performed by justices and judges as determined by reference to judicial compensation in other states and the federal government, the value of comparable service performed in the private sector, including private judging, arbitration, and mediation, the compensation of attorneys in the private sector, the cost of living and changes in the cost of living, the compensation from the state presently received by other public officials in the state, including state constitutional officers, deans, presidents, and chancellors of the public university systems, city attorneys in major metropolitan areas, other factors that are normally or traditionally taken into consideration in the determination of judicial compensation. And most importantly, and I feel like in the past, this is the factor that this commission has most heavily relied on, the level of overall compensation adequate to attract the most highly qualified individuals in the state from a diversity of life and professional experiences to serve in the judiciary without unreasonable economic hardship and with the judicial independence unaffected by financial concerns. So we'll make sure to send that out also to the commission so y'all can see exactly the factors that the commission must consider in setting their recommendation. One other thing I did want to bring up briefly when we're talking about experience, because Angela's going to go into that in depth in the data that we have. A constitutional amendment was passed in the last election that actually raises the experience required to run for district judge. It's now, you have to have 8 years of being a practicing lawyer or judge to run for a district judgeship, and then 10 years for appellate judge. So it used to be 5 years for a district judge, and I'll look, I don't want to misspeak, but I believe it was 8 years for an appellate judge. But the voters did raise the experience levels required to run for a judge in this state. So I think that's also a new factor that the commission should consider. So I'll let Angela move forward with her presentation. She's got a lot of great information to share.
And if I could just interject, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I have to drop off to attend another meeting, but again, thank you to everyone. I'll put my contact information in the chat, and if I can be of any help to any of you as you go forward with your work, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thank you again for your update and your time. We very much appreciate your service to the state in the role you play, and also to us by your attendance today. Thank you, Justice, for coming.
Thank you.
May I interject just before we go to the next speaker? Can we get, can we get the statute, those considerations emailed to the members of the committee?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
I will
they
do
are.
that.
You'll send that out. Thank you.
Yes.
Everything that we're doing here today, we'll send out by email, and also the presentation that Judge Charles gave as well. We'll get all of that information out to you. Megan and her staff are fantastic about getting things done like that.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask just real quick a couple of questions of Judge Charles based on his presentation?
Sure.
Just I don't want to get too far down the next road. I was familiar that the DA's district attorney compensation relates to the district judges, and in the situation where a DA for 12 years, call it, is making X, and to go into the judiciary is going to go down to the 0 to 4. Has there been any discussion about removing that, where if you move from a district attorney or criminal district attorney role to the judge, that it's a parallel move?
There has been some discussion up until the new pay increase went into play in 2019. The district attorney's salary was the same as a district judge. As we went through the negotiations on the tier system, initially the DAs were not even in the pay raise, and it took a lot of effort to get them into it. But one of the considerations was, while we kept the DA's pay structure the same, that, a 4-year DA would move up to 154 and an 8-year DA would move up to 168. Some of the considerations were, well, why does a DA automatically move over to a judge salary at that same level when somebody else who may have 12 years experience, or maybe a chief public defender, would not? So there were those considerations on why to make the DA special under those circumstances. But it now will have some consequences because, like I said, there's a couple judgeships that have opened up in the last few years in some rural areas that the DA is not going to consider running for now because those DAs would be taking a bigger pay cut, even though, according to a lot of folks, they are probably the most qualified candidates in their counties. And so there's discussions to be had on that. What you do is you end up then with some other lawyers saying, well, okay, why do the DAs get that special privilege? So there's discussions to be had on it. And I know the DAs Association has already reached out to me about discussing that.
Well, I can just say in rural North Texas, within minutes of my announcement of being appointed, a district attorney called me with that very question about how to do that. So, and my next question real briefly is that same situation with a county court at law judge becoming a district court? Do they go back to the 0 mark or do they get to carry over?
There was a language in there to where your time as a county court at law judge counts towards your time on the salary scale as a district judge. It does not count towards the time, though, towards longevity pay. Okay. So a 12-year county court at law judge would move into the 8-year slot of a district judge, but they would not qualify for longevity pay until they had served 12 years in the state retirement system.
And one final question. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to interrupt real quickly about it wasn't just some of the issues that Judge Charles was talking about. It was also retirement because district attorneys are in a separate retirement system than judges. And so from what I remember when those discussions were happening, and I've also been contacted by the District Attorneys Association about this issue and looking at it and trying to address it this coming session, but that there was complications because of the retirement issue because they're not in the same system. So that's not obviously something that the commission needs to worry about, but just some background.
Okay. And my last question, Judge Charles, relates to, I can see where the legislators, what do they make? $7,200 a year while they're in service. And then when they retire, they get the same as a district judge and that they don't want the blowback. Is there just a way to reduce that if just in simple math, I guess, if the judges go up X%, that their retirement is X% less than an entry level district judge?
I think there are some ways to do it. You could either do it legislatively, you could just put a caveat like for this particular raise, say, that there could be some savings language that this increase does not affect, the section for legislative retirement for this session. Other ideas are that it would not affect it for this biennium, but would go into effect the next biennium, basically making that legislator have to get reelected. Or you can look at something, delinking totally. The problem is, where do you link their retirement to then if we delink from a district judge's salary? And you have to remember, there are a lot of legislators who would first of all be very much in favor of raising their own retirement and who like it being linked to us. So I think we have to be creative in how we do it, either like saying what it just shouldn't affect for this particular pay raise, or maybe putting it off a biennium for it to be effective. But I think we need to look at being creative. And if we do suggest a delinking totally, where does it go to? Because we have to be able to link the retirement to something, because that's one, our legislators don't get paid very much. And so that is, one of the benefits of somebody. And another thing that's, they don't even qualify for retirement unless they've served eight years in the legislature.
Thank you very much.
I'm not quite clear why it has to be linked to anything. Why can't it just stand on its own? I mean, why can't the structure stand on its own?
I think the reason it's been linked, first of all, I think it got linked to district judges because originally it was like, oh, we're just giving the judges a raise, and people kind of overlooked it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be linked to something. They just have to be able then to set it I think it's for the legislature, it's easier to be linked to something than for them to just say, oh, we're going to boost our retirement now up to that of 150,000 or 154,000.
Okay.
If I might, the backstory, as I understood it from some of the people involved in that, was that the judges thought there was a better chance actually of getting a pay raise if the legislators' retirement was linked to the judicial salary. And as it turned out, some of the people involved in that said that was exactly the wrong thing to do, because now every pay raise that's considered, it blows up in the newspapers against the legislators. And so, but you take some of the key legislators, and that idea has come up before, but some of the key legislators, it can go so far, but you have a few key legislators, it just is not going to get past them. So the problem is it's in, the legislature is probably not going to unlink them. And you can talk about it all day long and it'll get to committee, and then all of a sudden it just comes to a screeching halt. So it's some things are just the way they are.
And just for historical perspective on linking, trying to break the link too, in 2013, when we were near the end of the session, we were working on raising, there were some legislators mentioning, hey, why don't we delink? And there was even a proposed language floating around. And me and one of the other judges were walking through the by the House chamber, and one legislator who is almost fully vested came up to me and goes, if you all try to seriously delink, I'll kill the pay raise. So it ended up, it could backfire either way. So it's a difficult issue to deal with. We've been dealing with it since 2011, or really longer than that.
Yeah. Other questions? This is good discussion. I want you all to feel informed and know what you're trying to work with.
And I'll put my contact information in the chat also. That way, if any of you all have any questions afterwards, feel free to contact me.
Judge Shark, maybe you should just also tell them why you've been involved in this so much and kind of what your role is that way.
Yeah, I was a county court at law judge for 7 years and involved in the County Court at Law Judge Association. And then when I became a district judge in 2009, I got involved with the State Bar Judicial Section and was chair of the Judicial Section in 2013. And then since that time, I have served as the chair of the legislative committee for the Judicial Section, and just been deeply involved in that. And it's just been something that I enjoy doing in a warped sense way, I guess, but I enjoy doing it. And I've built up a good rapport with a lot of legislators and a lot of folks who are involved in this. And so that's why I'm still involved. And I guess I'll stay involved until we get the system right, or the voters decide that it's time for me to go home. But that's why I've been doing it. And, been involved working with the legislature since even when I was an assistant DA. So really for about the last 20 some years.
And I will just say thank you so much for that. You've been a great wealth of information, and I know you have others that are constantly working with this, and the legislators that tend to be favorable to working with us. I think that my concern is going to be specifically what you said. When we come out with a 15-20% number, it always looks like we're some sort of crazy bunch of bureaucrats that don't have any face of reality, that the legislature just, they immediately say, are you kidding? I mean, how are we going to do that? And so I think we've got to come up. One thing we tried was doing 7 and 7, where we did a 7% the first year of the legislative biennium, and then 7 the following, or we did some work that way to try to make it a little bit more palatable, because I agree it's going to probably be knocked down, but I also think that it makes us look a little bit like we're out of touch if we come in with too big of a number, unless we explain that it's specifically catch up or something for that first base level and that was overlooked or whatever you want to call it. We've got to give them cover because otherwise I think we strike out at home base, I mean, we don't even get to first. And so it's really something that I would, encourage everyone to consider and think about is the average taxpayer is not excited about giving people, state employees raises, and whether you like it or not, whether it's judges or anything else. And so, you look really out of touch when it goes out in the paper that we recommended X that is, just too high for what everybody else is having to deal with in their lives. So I think that's part of the nature of why me as a businessman is on this committee is not to just be where we're not supposed to just be insular, where it's just the lawyers and the judges agreeing they need more money. As the business community, as this commission, we're supposed to look at how does this look to the legislature, how does it look to the voter, and what are we trying to do to accomplish the best ultimate end. And so I definitely think we've got to focus on that base pay, but we've got to be really careful about how that looks.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I think is also very important is the numbers, which I know that is Angela going to show over there, but also like the fact, the last legislature section that we proposed, we had also numbers behind number of cases, because I am one of those guys that you just mentioned that don't care about kind of raising salaries to people just without any reason. I mean, the Judge Charles provided really good information on that for source, which was unknown to me, even though I joined the last time, but I came in right in between the started of this proposal, the commission getting together and kind of driving that one. But I'm a numbers guy. I'm a technology guy. I run a business. I build a lot of companies. I used to work for Lloyd Consulting, and I kind of used to kind of look at it when I go to create a strategy for a client. I need to understand what's the foundation, right? So I think numbers is very good. I think that as we move this along, I think it will be very good to augment not the salary, but also the volume, which is, I was very impressed last time, the volume out of cases that the court has kind of worked through, even through COVID, which is very impressive. The number of cases that we went through is oh my gosh, is extremely impressive. I was proud to be part of Texas and kind of be part of the knowing that our judges has kind of be able to deliberate in many cases and close the docket and kind of move forward. So so I think that is to me is a very key. And another one is, who can we help? I mean, I am close to a lot of legislators, but I mean, we all are. I mean, you mentioned Jeff Leach, which is a personal friend of mine. I have his cell phone. I can ping him anytime I want. Matt Shaheen, he should be his campaign treasurer. I am good friends with Angela Paxton. I know all the people in Collin County. I know a lot of the legislators out of Dallas. So it would be kind of nice to know which is the committee and the finance committee that we can also help kind of talk to them and explain the situation. Because sometimes when it goes at large, a lot of the state reps and senators don't really look at single cases. They look at the big picture, right? I think it's also take a lot of network from our end to explain why we are asking that and what are we doing. Mr. Chairman, a point you made, the 7%, 7.7, I think is great, because I'm always afraid asking for big number, right? So I think that things like that, I think we can be creative and be kind of work together to get to the desired outcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's great, and absolutely, I think that when the time comes, Megan, we do need to know who will be on the finance committee and who will be talking about this. And we will definitely want to talk about what our strategy is and what the key points are. But building your case, without a doubt, building the context, I think that's been the hard part, is when the mandate says we have to share one set of data. I really feel like that we've got to give the context of how is the legal profession comparing to other professions, and what in this state. Just the fact that you're going to see in the data a minute, just the fact that we are number 6 with a bunch of other states. Well, maybe we're number 6 on every other pay scale, but that doesn't stop people from moving here, and it doesn't stop people from wanting to live here and the freedoms that they're experiencing and so forth. And there's other factors such as taxation and freedom and all those kinds of things. So it doesn't mean that number 6 is bad. It just means we are. And we've got to look at how we are with other professions. Just to, there's no appetite, I can assure you, none, to be number 1. We do not need to beat California and be paying our judges number 1. There's no appetite for it at all. And so it's like, okay, that's information, but how do we compare in other professions as well is really what I think building the context and helping the legislature know that is really important. We want to go to, you have more, Megan, or do you want to go to Angela now?
I think we can go to Angela now. A really great discussion, though.
You share my screen here. All right. As Judge Charles shared with you, this is the current pay structure. I'd like to point out that there's the maximum salary for each level. And then because we have the experience pay structure now, the tiers, I calculated the average for each group as of January 2022, and also listed the state longevity pay that is available if they reach that 12 years. The chief of the Supreme Court and the appellate courts and the courts of criminal appeals do get an additional supplement of $2,500 to $3,000. And the judges of the courts of appeals and district judges have their state salary, but they're also eligible for a county supplement of up to $9,000 for the appellate courts and up to $18,000 for district judges. All of the appellate court judges receive the maximum supplement from the counties. 82% of judges at the district level receive the maximum supplement. And then 80 judges receive anywhere between $2,000 to $17,000, and 5 judges receive no supplement in the state. We've always compared to the top 5 largest states. And as you said, they're mostly liberal and highly financed. So this shows the compensation of the justices on the highest state courts. Texas is the second most populous state, but has the lowest levels of compensation compared to this group. And the base salary for Texas judges is significantly lower than in other states. I have the base salary and the average for Texas. In the courts of appeals, the judges also rank last in comparison at both the base and the average. And for the district judges, general jurisdiction is what they're called nationwide, which is our district judges. The base salary for Texas ranks last, but the average salary ranks 5th, just above Florida. And then when you look at Texas, based upon information from the Texas Workforce Commission, we are comparing the average salary in 2020 as the latest data that they had. The base district judge salary lagged behind the average salary of a Texas lawyer by almost $3,000. And with the exception of the average salary on the highest courts, all other judicial salaries fell below the average salary of an experienced lawyer in the state. An experienced lawyer is defined as the average wage earned by the upper 2/3 of all workers in the occupation. So a significant portion of the workforce. When you look at our judges, this chart shows the experience of the judges as a Texas attorney, broken down by court level with the average in parentheses for each level. The majority of appellate and district judges had at least 20 years of experience, and more than 40% had at least 30 years. So this is a very experienced group. In the highest appellate courts, 64% of judges were 55 or older in 2021. And this group tends to be the youngest. There's a lot of turnover on the Supreme Court, so it keeps the age down. But if you look at the appellate, intermediate appellate courts, the aging was starting to happen there up until 2019, when there was significant turnover in the elections due to large number of defeats. But still, in 2021, 64% of judges in the intermediate appellate courts were 55 or older. And in our district judges, we have seen a significant aging. So it's the blue shades. Because of the significant turnover, we're down to 57% of judges who are 55 or older. But in the past, the average age of the district judges had been increasing and increasing. So we're not getting new people in. We had very experienced judges, and now they're all retiring. The average years of service on the judge's current bench average 4 to 9 years, depending on the court level. The Court of Criminal Appeals is pretty steady. It's usually 9 years on the bench. District courts change with the election cycle. And Supreme Court is actually fairly high now. We've got some stability there. It's usually a lot lower because of significant turnover. And in the courts of appeals, there was a significant turnover in 2019 due to widespread election defeats. By law, we are required at OCA to track every district and appellate judge and determine why they left, how they left, whether it was defeat, death, resignation, did not seek re-election. And everybody that left voluntarily, we must create a survey. So we track the turnover rate and the voluntary turnover rate. The voluntary turnover rate declined in 20 to 21, and that's because it's a non-election year. So the turnover tends to be lower. In an election year, a lot of judges decide not to run for re-election. So this is all voluntary. They're deciding not to run for re-election. The number of judges voluntarily leaving office by not seeking re-election has generally been increasing since the fall of 2005. So as I said, a lot of them are aging, and they get to a point where the retirement, it's better for them to retire and then go do another job, whether it's mediation, arbitration, go into private practice, just pick up some more work, because it's not in their best interest to stay longer when they hit a certain point. Those surveyed in 20 and 21, almost 2/3 of judges who left indicated that retirement was a significant influence. So as these judges are aging, we have seen for the last 8 years that retirement is their key indicator for why they're leaving. Salary has gone way down, but as I said, they're all aging. So at some point they hit retirement age and it's in their best interest to leave. This is the lowest figure I've ever seen, but only less than 20% of respondents indicated that an increase in salary would have affected their decision to leave. So this is our famous chart. It shows the base salary of district judges since fiscal year 1991. The light blue line shows actual compensation, and the darker line shows the salary level needed to keep pace with inflation. Increases in compensation are marked with the percentages. So you can see 7, 1, 3% in the early days, and then we go long stretches without an increase, resulting in 25 or 23% in 05, 12% the last time. And the base salary level for a district judge outpaced, inflation outpaced the salary in fiscal year 18. So about 4 years ago. And where we sit right now, it would have been $157,779 that we need to pay to keep up with inflation. And this chart shows what a 10, 15, or 20% increase would mean. 10%, we're still below where inflation is, so 154,000. 15% would be 161,000, which will be outpaced by inflation within a year, and it's probably even sooner because I got the latest CPI statistics, but as you know, inflation's just really, really high right now. And a 20% would be $168,000. And this final chart shows how that would play out for 10, 15, and 20% increases. The chiefs of the highest appellate courts would be making $242,000. The courts of appeals, 220, and the base salary for a district judge would be up to 168 with a maximum of 200,000. And that's all I have. I'll take any questions. If anybody wants me to go back to any slide.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that I think you said it there at the end that those inflation numbers were calculated on the latest official data, to 2022 and or 2021, and not including this inflationary year.
It was through March, so it does not.
Okay.
April and going forward, of course, but March was the highest. It's of course been 8%.
Okay, Angela, thank you very much. Commissioners, tell me if you have any questions or concerns or thoughts about the data presentation.
I have a quick question, Mr. Chairman. We on the mandate, you mentioned, Megan, that beyond judge, right? We can look at also salary of stakeholders. Do we have anything related to like the attorney general salaries, the governors, the executive directors for the different organizations, commissions, department in the state of Texas?
We can,
how we compare that?
Yeah, we can pull that, and it says, the presidents and chancellors of universities. So we can pull that data and present that to the committee as well.
Yeah, because of being a former board of regent, I know how much some of the president makes. Yes. And that would kind of help our case, because those guys are well compensated, especially the big schools.
Right. I think in the past, the commission has thought because the salary for some of those individuals was already well above the judicial salaries, that it wasn't relevant. You'll see in past reports that the commission has stated that many times, but we're happy to pull that data together, and we can get that for the commission to look at.
Yeah, because I think it might just help kind of people who have a visual understanding. We don't use that thing very prevalent, but it's a good way to show there is really discrepancy not only within the legal, right, and what we are with the inflation, but also some of the other ones that is getting paid that is part of and it's probably a better comparison than kind of looking at California and it's all the other states.
Yeah, the last time that discussion came up, I think it was a little bit of the same kind of thing. Two wrongs don't make a right. Just because we're overpaying our presidents of our universities doesn't mean we want to compare that, in California. And I don't know that it makes anybody really particularly happy. It just makes people mad. If you want to publish it, I guess it's something that could be helpful, but I think that people think that the universities are way overcompensated.
Oh, big time. Yeah. But it was not for the point. I think the point is because it's part of the statute, right? So I think it would be kind of, if we're talking about information and kind of help leverage that one, because I totally agree, is a two different field but is part of giving overall picture of the situation, how poor judges have been compensated, and it kind of it begs to the position of why we should not be considering a higher pay.
Yeah. If you all have any specific questions or slides you want to view, let's do that. And if not, we'll go back to full screen so we can see everybody's faces for closing up here.
Mr. Chairman, Conrad Davis, I just wanted to add, if the talking about inflation, and we all know it's out of control right now, but if current projections hold true, the projections are that Social Security beneficiaries will get almost a 9% increase in January 2023, and I think again, if that holds true, that's something that we can also make reference to in terms of looking at that 15 to 20% possible pay increase, because if Social Security beneficiaries could possibly get 8.99%, again, we know that judges were lagging behind. It's been since 2013. And so I don't know. I just think that this might be the year that we could make a difference.
And the point you're making also, we'll have a lot more data by the final report, because this has to be submitted by when, Megan? And
it's December 1st.
Yeah, December. So we're going to have a year under our belt of additional data that will be applicable. And I'm like you, and unfortunately don't believe we're seeing any check in inflation. I think it's continuing to soar, and it's going to be, I think that's what the legislature is going to be dealing with, is how many other things are going to have to be dealt with to cover inflation. And again, that will crowd out raises for a lot of people, but it doesn't mean we don't make our best effort moving forward. Megan, what other information do we need to cover? I know we're closing in on an hour and a half here, and do want to close this as soon as we can.
Yes, so just for y'all's knowledge too, the Senate Finance Committee took up an interim charge on inflation last week. If anyone's interested in looking at or watching the recording of that hearing, the state judicial salaries didn't come up, but state employee salaries did come up, and state judges are state employees. And so we're happy to send that link if y'all are interested in looking at what the discussion was about and what they were talking about. The next steps would be, we do need to set a meeting date for probably mid to late summer. And I say that because if we want to have the Compensation Commission's recommendations included in the legislative appropriation request with the Comptroller Judiciary section, we have to get that to them in time for them to put that in their request. And usually those are due in August. We haven't gotten the final date of when the LARs are going to be due this year, but it would be helpful to have the Compensation Commission's recommendation before that. So if that is something that the commission wants to do, which I think there's been a lot of discussion that is beneficial. I believe it was beneficial to have it included in their budget. So we'll need to have that done before. Also, the commission in the past has had a public hearing where they've taken public testimony in person. And we have different advocacy groups, members of the public, judges come and testify on the importance of adequate compensation for judges. And so we'll have to schedule that hearing as well.
Yeah, so is my intention, or I thought if we could, we'd like to kill two birds with one stone and try to have the public hearing on the same day of the meeting, and that would then be in person in Austin, so that you could listen to the hearing, do both our official meeting and our public hearing that during that time period. So we need to look at a summer date, and Megan will be polling you maybe through a a calendar poll device or just individually asking you about dates that work for everyone. We want to try to have as many participants as we can to listen and have the public hearing, and we'll have our official meeting then in the late summer. And so you've been given a lot of information today. I hope it's been informative. If you have other questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me personally. Megan, I don't mind you giving my cell phone out, and happy to talk with anybody offline if you'd like to do so, or set up another Zoom meeting. This Zoom meeting went about as good as any I've seen. You all have become very practiced in how to do it and what to do. It went very well. But anyway, if you have any questions, concerns now before we adjourn, go ahead and raise your hand or let me know. Yes, Cindy?
I have just a few comments following up on Mr. Davis's comments. I do think that as a committee, as our commission ponders this, we need to think about not being too hesitant in what we ask for, because between the inflation issue, the recruitment issue, which I have strong opinions about that we'll share, partly based on my own background, having served for 4 years as an appellate justice. But the people of Texas have now spoken, saying that they want their judges to have greater qualifications. And dovetailing with that goes, in my view, an impetus for a raise. And I think we can use all of those factors in our favor. I agree with the chairman that some are more politically palatable than others, but if we don't have some comparison to what judges make relative to a young attorney, and that we're last as a state, and this is a profession, part of this blurs into the way judges are elected. But Texas holds itself out, rightly so, as a very pro-business state. And there's been a move afoot in several sessions to create these business courts. Why? Because there's some belief that perhaps between the workload, the lack of recruiting candidates, et cetera, that it needs specialized courts. I'm not taking a position on that, but I'm just saying this is the year, and I think we ought to advocate for that. Now, let me caveat it with, this is my first year on the commission. I thought Judge Charles's background on the legislative history was super helpful. I'm loosely familiar with some of those efforts, but I don't have a good feel for the opposition that will, present itself in the face of, say, if this committee came out and recommended a 20% increase. But I just wanted to say, I don't want to, there are many factors this year that I think make it important, not the least of which is the staggering inflation. So wanted to give those 2 cents and say, thank you to the committee, and thank you to Judge Charles and Justice Busby for bringing that data forth.
Thank you, Justice. Your comments are well taken. Mr. Davis?
Yes, Chairman, if I can exercise a point of privilege, but I just want to extend a personal thanks to Megan and her staff for bringing the speakers and the presentation to us this morning. Megan, well done.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you all know that the real chairman is there. She's taking care of making all this happen. So I appreciate your recognition of Megan and her good work and their staff. Kelly does a great job as well. And I'm sure the others I don't know as well, but they've been fantastic to work with. Any other comments or concerns, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, just one quick, mine, if I can, just a personal, being selfish, for this late summer meeting, July, I am overseas the entire month of July. So any June or August works for me, but July is horrible. So I'll be up front.
We were talking early August is probably where.
That would be perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. That's fine. And I appreciate y'all letting us know that. Any others? Well, thank you all for your service, your good work. It is, it's a difficult challenge to govern, right? We're all appointed by a Republican governor, and it's a Republican legislature, and we're confirmed by Republican Senate. And so the reality is it may not be in your personal mindset to say, hey, we need to go spend more money, and the state needs to spend more money. But the reality is we want to be a competent and strong judiciary that serves our community. And when you're governing, you have to look at all the factors that play a role in what make up a good workforce and recruiting new judges and so forth. And I know personally, I've served as a treasurer for 2 judicial races just in this last cycle, and it's a lot of work, and it's not an easy role to not only recruit people to take a different job, to run for that job, spend money running for that job in many cases, and then possibly take a pay cut. So I think we have to look at that recruitment factor as a key issue, and look at how we not only keep them, but how are we going to keep getting judges into the system. So your efforts are appreciated, and I hope you'll be able to jump on board with whatever final recommendations are made, and we certainly want your input. Megan, is there anything else you'd like to say or we need to do?
I don't think so. We'll send out a meeting poll and secure a date so we can get started on planning the next meeting and public hearing.
Okay, well, with that, it's very nice to meet you all, and I'm honored by your presence, and clearly the stature of this group, this august body, is quite impressive, and I'm so glad to have you all as part of it, and thank you for your service. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, everybody. That's me.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.